Part 2. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 11. Unknowingly, Yu once again came to the second floor of the dungeon. Because there were gradually more people on the first floor, Yu, who felt a little troublesome, simply went directly to the second floor where there were slightly fewer people. Yu still remembered the route he walked yesterday very clearly. If possible, he could easily go down to the fifth floor. However, because of Ana's instructions yesterday, Yu gave up this plan for the time being. Forget it, let's continue taking a look at the second floor. Maybe there are too few monsters on the first floor, so that's why you never encounter them? Yu thought so and started wandering around on the second floor while reading. Time passed like this. When it was almost dusk, Yu still didn't gain anything at all. Now, no matter how slow his reaction was, Yu still felt that something was not right. This has nothing to do with luck at all, right? Due to some individual reasons, I cannot encounter monsters. Yu thought so and frowned in distress. So why exactly? What if you can't meet the monster yourself? Touching the wall of the dungeon maze, Yu suddenly thought of a certain possibility. If this dungeon is alive and the birth of monsters is also controlled by this dungeon, could it be because it is afraid of something that prevents monsters from being born around it? Is this dungeon afraid of me? Yu touched the tip of his nose and felt that his assumption was a little too arrogant. He was just an ordinary person. Why would he let this dungeon, which even the gods cared about, fear him? Unknowingly, Yu came to the stairs leading to the third floor again. Looking at the deeper place below, Yu couldn't help but fall into thinking. After all, should we continue going down? Although Ina warned herself like that, she was really unwilling to not meet the monster. Yu sighed softly as he thought about this, and finally chose to move forward downwards. After all, it would be too unacceptable to continue to return empty-handed. With this idea in mind, Yu wandered around the third floor, but still found no trace of the monster. This is really interesting. Lowering his head and muttering to himself, Yu looked at the stairs leading to the fourth floor that he passed by for the fourth time. In the same situation as yesterday, Yu did not encounter a single monster on the third floor. If you are really a living being in the dungeon, can you tell me what exactly you are afraid of? Why don't you think there is nothing in me that can make you afraid? Sighing so softly, Yu immediately went down to the fourth floor without hesitation and then quickly went to the fifth floor. Since you refuse to spawn monsters around me, then I will keep going until you spawn monsters around me. If Yu's thoughts at this moment were known to others, they would think him crazy, but there would be no one in this dungeon who would kindly remind him of the dangers of such behavior. After all, in this dungeon, you are likely to lose your life if you just casually believe what others say. A stranger may suddenly become an enemy who stabs you in the back. Soon after the fifth floor, Yu found the stairs leading to the sixth floor. After going down to the sixth floor, Yu's movements finally slowed down. The sixth level is a completely unfamiliar world to Yu, and the terrain and routes are not familiar at all. However, it is not without traces to follow. After all, this dungeon has existed for who knows how many years, and there are also who knows how many adventurers come and go. There are several routes that are often taken, and the road to the lower level must be the same as other places. There are certain differences in the way. For example, there are inconspicuous scratches at the corners, relatively smooth stone pillars, and paths with less dust. Through these, you can still easily determine which is the correct road. The seventh floor soon. On the eighth and ninth floors, Yu had almost reached the 10th floor of the dungeon in less than an hour. Even an experienced player with a map with the first 10 levels of layout might not be as fast as Yu. After all, they need to be wary of monsters that may suddenly come out of the wall when moving forward, but Yu has no need to do so. This underground maze, which is known as extremely dangerous, has always maintained a calm attitude in front of Yayu, and it looks like its own back garden. If we go further down, we'll reach the 10th floor, right? Looking at the stairs leading to the lower level in front of him, Yayu sighed with some trouble. As a result, until now, he still hasn't encountered a monster. This is no longer something that can be explained by luck. What on earth is going on? Just when Yayu was standing at the top of the stairs with a distressed look on his face, thinking about whether to continue going down, a roar came from under his feet. It's like the howl of an animal like a cow, but this sound is definitely not something that a docile cow can make. A monster appears? Yayu was stunned for a moment, and finally realized that he had finally encountered a monster. The ground shook, and the monster that made the sound seemed to be running wildly, and the target seemed to be right here. The joy of discovering the monster was instantly dispelled, and Yayu suddenly remembered one thing, that is, although he found the monster, this monster seemed to be an existence below the 10th level, right? No. The howling sound like a cow. According to Ina, shouldn't this be the Minotaur, a monster unique to the 15th floor? Although it was quite boring when Ina taught herself this knowledge, Yayu still wrote down some key things, and the Minotaur was one of them. Ina only spoke a few words about this monster that haunted around the 15th floor, but Yayu knew that this monster was at the LV2 level. Although it seems that there is only one level of difference, the power of LV2 is definitely beyond the power of LV1. So, at this time, should you run away? Recalling Ina's words, Yayu muttered to himself. The ground beneath his feet was shaking constantly, and the roar of the terrifying beast was close to his ears, but Yayu still looked like he had no sense of crisis. It seems that Yayu felt very dissatisfied because he finally found the monster and had to run away. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, BasedonanAnime. Chapter 12. If you are at LV1, you will definitely not be able to defeat LV2. This is what Ina warned Yayu. When Yayu curiously asked about the gap between LV1 and LV2, Ina responded with 4 words, world of difference. So under normal circumstances, when a LV1 is attacked by a LV2 monster, running away is undoubtedly the first choice, right? However, Yayu is obviously not a normal person, or his thinking circuit is too different from that of a normal person. When he discovered that the LV2 Minotaur was approaching, Yayu hesitated for a long time and seemed a little hesitant about whether he should escape directly. First, I was a bit dissatisfied when I finally saw the monster after all the effort and ended up having to run away. The other is that Yayuxin still wants to see the strength of the so-called LV2. After all, Ina is right in saying that LV1 can never defeat LV2. How can I really be sure if I don't try it? But soon, Yayu no longer needed to worry, because the roaring Minotaur had already reached the 9th floor from the 10th floor, and its huge body blocked Yayu's way. This was a bull-headed monster that was as big as Yayu and 2 people, holding a giant axe. The moment it discovered Yayu, it launched a ferocious attack. The sharp sound of piercing the air caused by the swing of the giant axe made Yayu couldn't help but squint his eyes. He could clearly see the trajectory of the opponent's attack, but it was extremely difficult to dodge. His body cannot keep up with the reaction speed of his brain. This is Yayu's most intuitive feeling at this moment. He could clearly see the trajectory of the opponent's attack and just had to avoid it in the expected direction, but Yayu was embarrassed to find that his body couldn't react at such a speed. Sure enough, it's because the physical values are too poor, right? At this critical moment of life and death, Yayu was still thinking about such a thing. Although he did not completely dodge the Minotaur's attack, Yayu's efforts also prevented him from being split in half. Tragic end. The huge stone axe barely scraped past Yayu's body and chopped on the ground. The biting stones brought up by the strong wind and the force of the chop spattered onto Yayu's body like bullets. Under this huge impact, Yayu's body flew out uncontrollably. Although he was a little embarrassed, he was still alive for the time being. As expected, it was a little taken for granted, and there was simply no way to fight back. The Minotaur who delivered this ferocious blow did not pursue the victory. The huge monster let out a heavy breathing sound, as if the blow just now consumed a lot of its physical strength. Obviously this is not normal. How could a monster as powerful as the Minotaur be exhausted from such a clumsy chop? Yayu, who stood up and kept a distance from the other party, noticed that the Minotaur was covered in scars and looked like it had escaped from somewhere. I see, this guy was probably chased by adventurers and ran here from the 15th floor, right? But even if this Minotaur is exhausted and scarred, I am no match for it. As expected, the gap between LV1 and LV2 is huge. After the Minotaur analyzed this fact from the attack just now, Yayu immediately turned around and ran away without even thinking about it. The Minotaur, who was wielding a giant axe behind him, roared and chased after him. Not long ago, he was chased by a hateful human. Now he finally encountered a weak human. How could he let Yayu go? When he started exercising vigorously, Yayu realized how bad his body was. Weak and powerless, he was already on the verge of collapse after just a short run. Realizing that his body had reached its limit, Yayu simply stopped running, stood on the spot and turned around to face the pursuing Minotaur. Death was close at hand, but Yayu's mood was surprisingly calm. Strange, why don't I feel scared? Seeing the Minotaur approaching step by step with heavy breathing, Yayu thought so strangely. What he held in his hand was a somewhat funny-looking dagger. According to Yayu's analysis, if his physical fitness faced this Minotaur, his chances of winning would be 0. In other words, he would definitely die. But, why don't you feel any fear at all? Muttering to himself in such a trance, Yayu held the dagger and raised his hand to aim at the Minotaur who was gradually approaching. Seeing the weak human being in front of him making resistance movements, the highly intelligent Minotaur showed disdain in his scarlet eyes. The giant beast stepped forward step by step, crushing the ground, and the vibration caused Yayu to stand unsteadily for a while. Yayu was not moved at all, and an unknown presence slowly brewed in his dark eyes. A gust of cold wind suddenly blew in some of the cold underground city passages, and fine frost covered the walls of the tunnels on both sides. The Minotaur raised the giant axe and faced Yayu's palm holding the dagger. There was a crisp sound of shattering. The dagger and the giant axe did not collide, but the dagger in Yayu's hand shattered out of thin air. Like broken ice, the fragments of the dagger fell from Yayu's hand. The giant axe did not fall, and a bloody line streaked across the Minotaur's body. Woo! A clumsy sound came from the Minotaur's mouth. The running line not only crossed the torso, but also the majestic chest, hooves, then the upper wrists, thigh roots, lower limbs, shoulders, and finally reached the neck, all in one go. Silver light bloomed in front of Yayu's eyes, and then Yayu, whose eyes were completely filled with ice blue, reached forward like lightning, and tightly grasped the silver light. Why? A pleasant voice with a touch of surprise sounded through the monster's separated flesh and blood body. The Minotaur's flesh and blood, which should have broken into pieces and turned into pieces of flesh, solidified in the air at an extremely slow speed. The pure white frost blended into the blood and turned into a disgustingly thick consistency. The body of the Minotaur, which should have exploded into a cloud of blood, remained in pieces and was condensed into an ice sculpture. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Shang. Chapter 13. Ace Wallenstein is a swordsman. The person who taught her how to use a sword once told her that the sword is the life of a swordsman. No matter what the situation is, never throw away the sword in your hand. But now the girl could only stare wide-eyed, watching helplessly as her sword slipped from her hand and fell to the ground with a mournful cry. It turned out that everything was just an accident. As a member of the Loki family, he went on an expedition deep underground. On his way back, he encountered the Minotaur and accidentally let one of them escape. Wallenstein, who went in pursuit, pursued him all the way to the 9th level, and decisively attacked and killed the Minotaur when it was about to attack an innocent adventurer. Although it was an accident, Wallenstein had solved it perfectly, but why does this happen? This adventurer, could it be said that he is also a master of a certain family? If that was the case, why was he forced into a corner by the Minotaur? If not, how to explain what just happened? The opponent was actually able to catch his sword light, and at the moment when his weapon was caught by the opponent, a creepy and terrifying cold air spread along his sword. In an instant, Hua was directly hit. Lunstein's dexterous and slender palms lost all feeling, and became as if they didn't exist at all. As a swordsman, it was undoubtedly a great shame for Wallenstein to let his sword fall from his hand. What makes Wallenstein feel even more helpless is that her palms have not recovered yet, and they look like they have severe frostbite. Even if you want to pick up your own weapons, you can't. Who is this man? Wallenstein carefully looked at Yayu, who looked confused and didn't know what was going on. Watching him bend down to pick up his sword, he pursed his lips in embarrassment. That. He was still a little confused as to what had just happened, but Yayu was certain that the girl in front of him saved him. Anyway, please apologize to the other person first. That, your weapon. But what made Yayu a little puzzled was that the girl seemed to be very afraid of him, and cautiously backed away from him when he came over. Wallenstein was indeed a little afraid of Yayu now, and she really didn't want to touch that terrible cold air again. Although there was no pain after losing all consciousness, Wallenstein still felt an extremely terrible stinging sensation at the moment when the cold air invaded, the kind that seemed to tear her soul apart. Tingling sensation. Fortunately, because he lost all feeling in his palm in an instant, the pain disappeared as quickly as it came. Looking down at her palms, Wallenstein frowned slightly. Her palms looked the same as usual, but the skin was covered with a light layer of frost, making it look like she was wearing a layer of crystal gloves. Same, as beautiful as a work of art. Wallenstein knew that such severe frostbite was terrible. In an instant, all the nerves in his palm were destroyed. It can be said that his hand was completely disabled. I hope Reveria can heal this injury. Thinking this, Wallenstein raised his head and questioned Yayu. Who are you? The somewhat indifferent tone is not like the girl's indifferent character, but because she is not good at communicating with others. While Wallenstein and Yayu were looking at each other, Yayu was also looking at the goddess-like girl in front of him. Her stunning face was no less beautiful than Hestia's, and her slender body was dressed in light blue clothing. The soft limbs extending from the clothes also have a dazzling beauty. On the slender and soft body, the breasts are unusually full, as if on their own initiative. Wearing a silver breastplate with a heraldry, as well as gauntlets and accessories of the same color with the heraldry. The straight and smooth blonde hair that extends to her waist is dazzling, with a brilliance that is not inferior to that of the sun. On top of that figure that would make any woman jealous is an extremely cute and lovable baby face. And the color of the eyes looking at Yayu was also the same intoxicating warm golden color. Who am I? Yayu was slightly stunned for a moment because of the other party's question, as if he didn't know how to answer. He felt the faint hostility emanating from the girl, but he didn't know where the other party's hostility came from. Are you okay? Let me see your hands. Noticing the unnatural state of the girl's palm, Yayu stepped forward again and gently pinched the girl's frost-covered palm. Wallenstein's body trembled subconsciously, and he almost sent Yayu flying away with a backhand palm. Fortunately, Wallenstein had no intention of hurting Yayu, otherwise Yayu's small body might not be able to withstand the slap. Already unconscious, what's the use? Even though Yayu held his palm, Wallenstein still didn't feel the slightest bit of consciousness. The girl pouted cutely and stared at Yayu as if she was angry. Okay, take your time and watch, I want to see how you heal my hand. The hostility subsided unconsciously, because Wallenstein discovered that Yayu did not intentionally want to hurt him, and it seemed that he himself did not know what happened. Why? But soon, Wallenstein felt a little surprised, because her palms that should have been completely frozen and necrotic actually felt a little bit of coolness. It doesn't feel cold, but a very comfortable coolness. Wallenstein tried to move his fingers, and surprisingly found that his palms had regained feeling. How did you do it? Wallenstein stared at Yayu with some surprise and confusion. He clearly didn't feel any signs of healing magic. He just held his palm for a while, and such a terrible frostbite actually recovered. This is really too great. It's amazing. Yayu blinked, not knowing how to answer, but he knew that this should have a certain connection with his magical unclean frost, right? The Ultimate Lich King. Author, BasedonanAnime. Chapter 14. Anyway, thank you for coming to the rescue, that's your weapon. Yayu said this and handed the weapon that Wallenstein had originally fallen to the ground into her hands again. Wallenstein's palm still trembled unnaturally when it came into contact with her sword, because the blade of her sword was also covered with a light layer of frost. But just like holding Yayu's hand, Wallenstein no longer felt the coldness, instead he only felt the refreshing coolness. He sheathed his weapon with a sigh of relief, and then Wallenstein gently shook his head. I didn't save you. You killed this minotaur. Looking at the ice sculptures around him that looked like works of art, Wallenstein could not help but admire them softly. This kind of magic is really both beautiful and cruel. Wallenstein already thought of Yayu as an adventurer with powerful ice magic, although he was still curious about which family Yayu belonged to. After all, such a powerful adventurer should be very famous. It is impossible for him to say that without any impression. Did I kill him? Seeing Wallenstein staring at him seriously, Yayu muttered, and then looked at the minotaur who was frozen into ice beside him. It seemed that when this guy attacked me, I was distracted for a moment, and then when I recovered, the guy was frozen into ice. Magic. It was quite satisfying to use magic. Although Yayu had no idea how he used magic, he wouldn't be able to use it again if he was asked to use it now. Forget it, it is your own power anyway, and you will definitely use it again in the future, right? Are you planning to go to the lower level? Which family of adventurers are you from? I don't think I have heard of your name. The monsters in the dungeon will turn into powder and disappear soon after being killed. When Wallenstein said this, the ice sculpture of the minotaur next to them shattered and fell to the ground. When something as magnificent as a work of art was destroyed in front of his eyes, Wallenstein sighed with regret. Here's your trophy. Wallenstein handed Yayu a purple spar that fell together with the broken ice. Is this the monster's magic stone? How much can such a large piece be exchanged for? Looking at the exaggeratedly large magic crystal in his hand, Yayu murmured to himself. In the Adventurers Guild, he also saw adventurers who went to the gold exchange to exchange money, but the magic crystals in their hands were only fragments the size of fingernails. Wallenstein tilted his head in confusion at Yayu's words. Why would this powerful adventurer say such words like a rookie? Hey, are you okay, Ace? Is it resolved? While Wallenstein was thinking about this question, a call came from behind her, and a man with ears and a tail rushed over. The moment he saw Yayu standing in front of Isai, the man was slightly stunned. Then he raised his head slightly arrogantly and questioned Yayu. Who are you and why are you standing with Isai? The arrogant attitude of her companion made Wallenstein slightly unhappy, and she bowed slightly to Yayu apologetically. Sorry, that's just the kind of character Bert is. Ace, why are you apologizing to him? It is an insult to you to stand with such a low-level adventurer in your capacity. You are just a rookie who was scared by the Minotaur and ran around. Bert said so excitedly, and then looked at Ace, who turned around, his whole body froze. You guys. The orc young man looked at the scene in front of him with dull eyes and pointed his trembling fingers forward. Why? Only then did Wallenstein notice that his and Yayu's hands were still clasped together, and the two were holding hands like an intimate couple. It wasn't that Yayu was deliberately taking advantage of her, it was just that holding Yayu's hand felt so comfortable that Wallenstein couldn't bear to let go. After all, the desperate cold feeling at the beginning left a considerable psychological shadow on Wallenstein, but now holding Yayu's hand like this gave the girl a sense of peace of mind. The somewhat naive Wallenstein didn't think there was anything wrong with his current behavior with Yayu, but Bert Raga couldn't accept what he saw in front of him. The female adventurer and the strongest female swordsman of Labyrinth City, Orario's strongest warrior. She has a beauty that is not inferior to that of the goddesses. She is the object of her longing and admiration. She exists like a noble princess in her heart. He was actually held by a young boy who didn't know the details. Such a thing. How can you forgive? You, let Ace go. I want to duel with you. Well, she held my hand, not me holding her hand. The sudden change made Yayu slightly stunned, and then he raised the palms of the two people holding each other and said so innocently. Such words fell into Bert's ears, and they were undoubtedly like provocations, making the orc youth, who already had a bad temper, furious. Go to hell with the trash that blasphemes the noble Ace Wallenstein. Bert, who lost his mind, roared and charged towards Yayu, using his speed advantage as a werewolf to the limit in an instant. Ace Wallenstein is a LV5 adventurer, and so is Bert Raga. Faced with Bert, who was fighting with all his strength in anger, Wallenstein suddenly felt a heavy pressure. Pushing Yayu aside without saying a word, Wallenstein drew out the sword from his waist and faced him. Get out of the way of Ace. You bastard, if you're a man, don't hide behind a woman, compete with me openly. Only the winner has the right to pursue Ace. So, what exactly is going on? Yayu touched the tip of his nose with an innocent face, completely confused as to why the orc young man in front of him was angry. Pursue. Is this girl's name Isai? What a nice name. You, damn it, are you looking down on me? Seeing Yayu's dazed look that didn't take his words to heart at all, Bert roared, shaking Ace away, and immediately rushed towards Yayu. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, BasedonanAnime. Chapter 15. Careful. Wallenstein, who was pushed away, subconsciously shouted such words in the direction of Yayu. At first glance it seemed that she was worried about Yayu, but in fact she was worried about the safety of her companion Bert. After all, in Isai's heart, Yayu is a powerful mage who masters ice magic. She is still frightened by the terrible magic just now. Hearing Wallenstein's words of concern for Yayu, Bert was naturally even more angry and took action without reservation. You, the guy that Isai favors, let me see what is so special about you. In response to Bert's attack, Yayu looked helpless. His body had actually been overdrawn during the desperate run not long ago, and it was already very difficult to maintain a standing posture, let alone avoid Bert's attack. After a brief contact, Yayu had a rough understanding of the strength of the two people in front of him. Whether it was Isai or Bert, both of them were much stronger than the Minotaur just now. LV3, LV4, or a more powerful adventurer. Yayu was thinking this way, and at this moment, a burst of scolding sounded. Bert, what are you doing? A layer of pure white light flickered in front of Yayu, and immediately Bert's attack was blocked by this inconspicuous white shield. But even so, the impact of Bert's ferocious attack still passed through the shield and reached Yayu. As if it was the last straw that broke Yayu's mind, Yayu's body shook uncontrollably and immediately fell to the side. However, Yayu did not fall to the ground, but fell into a soft embrace. Are you okay? A gentle and apologetic voice came from his ears, and Yayu stared blankly at the woman hugging him with a faint smile. The iconic elf features can be seen on the woman with long emerald green hair, but compared to the half-elfina, this woman's ears are longer and sharper, something only the royal family among elves have. Physical characteristics. Of course, Yayu didn't know that much. He just stared at the soft face of the woman stupidly, with strange ripples in his heart. This strange warm feeling, it's so good, it makes people want to indulge in it involuntarily. If Yayu wasn't restrained by absolute rationality, he would even have the urge to act coquettishly in the other person's arms. Reveria is one of the powerful adventurers who belongs to the Loki familia along with Wallenstein and Bird. As the ace mage of the Loki familia, Reveria is the strongest mage in Aurario. The reputation of the sun. Reveria was still blaming herself for the mistake she made on the way back, which allowed a group of Minotaurs to escape to the upper level. Because she was a mage-ister, she was a little slower than Wallenstein and Bird, but she caught up quickly. As a result, as soon as I caught up, I saw Bird inexplicably attacking innocent passers-by. Ah, I'm fine. Looking at Yayu's absent-minded look, Lavilia didn't care. After all, she had become accustomed to the glorious influence of her motherhood. It was not just once or twice that she was called mother by others. Even the god adults would sometimes call her names that made her look embarrassed and helpless. As long as it's okay, the guys in the family are not smart enough to cause you trouble. It could be seen that Yayu's health was in extremely bad condition. Reveria continued to hug him considerately and directly used healing magic. But the moment the magic was cast, Reveria's eyes widened in surprise. Due to the high-intensity battle of the expedition and the hurried pursuit of the escaped Minotaur, Reveria's current condition is not very good. It can be said that there is not much remaining magic power left. But when she used healing magic to treat Yayu, not only did the magic power not dissipate, but her own magic power was replenished. What exactly is this? This feeling was like holding a battery for charging. The pleasant feeling of cold magic slowly flowing into her body almost made Reveria moan in comfort. This kid. At first, Reveria thought something had happened that caused her to forcibly absorb Yayu's magic power, but soon, Reveria discovered that this was not the case. Yayu seemed to be in good condition and didn't seem to have any magic power absorbed by him at all. Reveria couldn't help but stop the healing magic, and soon the cold magic flow also stopped. The cessation of the flow of magic power made Reveria let out a sigh of disappointment. The indescribable feeling of having her empty body filled with energy made the girl a little addicted. Thinking like this, Reveria couldn't help but blush a little, feeling that what she just thought was a bit too obscene. But, I really want to continue to feel the same feeling just now. Thinking like this, Reveria couldn't help but cast healing magic again, and then she was surprised to find that the feedback of magic from Yayu continued again. What is the reason for this? Is it because of this child's special physique? Because you helped him treat him, so you want to repay yourself as if you were grateful? Although my magic can heal injuries, it cannot restore fatigue. Let me support you. Wallenstein tilted his head. Although Reveria was said to be very gentle, she always felt that Reveria today was a little too gentle. Is this their first meeting? Why does Reveria care about him so much and be so close to him? Not only Wallenstein, but also Bert was a little unable to understand. Revelia, what do you mean? What's so good about this guy? If Ace is like this, you should be like this too. Seeing the intimacy between Reveria and Yayu, Bert looked puzzled and angry. That's enough, I haven't settled the score with you yet, Bert, what do you mean? It was our mistake to let the Minotaur escape. You just don't apologize, but you attack this child. What are your intentions? Reveria, who felt a little guilty after what Bert said, looked away from her and the other person, and said so sternly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 16. Looking away, Reveria said this, but her palms were still reluctant to leave Yayu's body, and the healing magic did not stop. Although this behavior may be a bit excessive, Reveria, who is lacking in magic power, does need to quickly replenish her magic power. If we wait for natural recovery, we don't know how long it will take. Since there is a faster way, why not do it? Anyway, my behavior like this won't harm the child's health, so it shouldn't matter if I let myself be so selfish, right? At least, I have never been in such close contact with a man, so I am giving him an advantage. Reveria thought this in her heart. This woman who always gave people a stable and elegant image among the Loki familia was blushing cutely at this moment. Fortunately, she turned her eyes and face away, otherwise her shy and coquettish scene would have been completely seen by Wallenstein and Bert. Rivalia, you know him. Wallenstein, who always felt something was wrong, tilted his head slightly and asked curiously. Ah, I don't know him. This is my first time meeting him. Why do you think I know him? Reveria's blushing face had recovered, and Reveria gently lifted her hair and said so funny. Tisk, what's so good about this guy? He's just a pretty boy. Ace is like this, you are like this, and being so close to him really makes people feel angry just looking at him. Although he had almost calmed down, Bert obviously hadn't completely calmed down yet. He stared at Yayu with a grin on his face. As elites of the Loki familia and LV5 adventurers, don't you feel ashamed to hang out with trash like this? Have you blathered enough? Bert, your strength and status as a member of the Loki family do not allow you to insult others unscrupulously. Apologize to him for your behavior. Huh? Apologize, let me apologize to him. Are you kidding me, Vilya? What's wrong with saying trash is trash? That's enough. Now go back and join the troops. I will truthfully report everything that happened today to the Lord God. Tisk, I know, it's really disappointing. It was obvious that Reveria was really angry, and Bert didn't dare to say anything. The werewolf muttered in a low voice, then turned around and left quickly. I'm sorry, Bert is just so outspoken. In fact, he didn't mean to target you, it's just. Reveria said, looking at Wallenstein who had a blank expression on her side, feeling a little embarrassed to speak. Everyone in the family knew that Bert had a crush on Wallenstein. In other words, everyone would be moved by such a strong and beautiful girl. But it is a pity that Wallenstein knows nothing about men and women. The naturally stupid girl cannot understand all the attentive performances of her suitors. It's okay, I'm not angry. The strong have the right to despise the weak. Now that I'm the weak, it's understandable for him to behave like this because he's the strong. After all, I've touched upon the sacred existence in his heart. Yayu is not an idiot. Wallenstein doesn't know why Bert is so excited, but he knows it very well. This. Listening to Yayu's words, Vilya didn't know what to say for a moment. She wanted to comfort the young man, but she felt that it was ironic to say such words in her own capacity. Don't you feel angry and angry? Why should I feel angry? He despises me and looks down on me. If I am angry because of this, doesn't it mean that what he said is right? Being angry because someone has been poked in a painful spot. Such a ridiculous and pitiful attitude is exactly the attitude of a weak person. Yayu said, slightly raising the corners of his mouth to reveal a sarcastic smile. Of course I don't think of myself as a weak person, but it can't change my view of being a strong person. He is a LV5 adventurer and is recognized as a strong person, and I am only LV1. Even if you still have Wallenstein, the same is true. Even if you don't seem to despise me, in your heart you can't help but look at me with eyes that look at the weak or sympathize with me. After Yayu finished speaking, Reveria was speechless for a while. They are LV5 adventurers, and they are really different from Yayu. Normally, let alone such a close contact, it would be impossible to even talk. Although he has been favoring Yayu from the moment they met until now, just like what he said, he did have that thought in his heart. Even just now, I felt that having close contact with Yayu like this now gave him a big advantage, so it was understandable for her to use him to restore her magic power. Thinking of this, Vilya lowered her head in shame. She didn't dare to look at Yayu's expression, but just whispered something in a low voice. I'm really sorry. Why should we apologize? If we have to bear the guilt because of our inadvertent thoughts, then we should all stop living. There is not enough time to repent every day. Yayu said this, raising his hand in a funny way, and gently caressing Reveria's face while looking at her surprised eyes. You are so beautiful, I really want you to be something that only belongs to me. Hey 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 hey. Reveria almost screamed out in surprise at Yayu's sudden frivolous behavior. She shyly pushed Yayu away like a young girl and took several steps back. I think there are not a few men who have felt your beauty and gentleness and have thoughts like mine. The difference is that they hide it in their psychology, but I said it directly. When Reveria took several steps back and stared at him in shame and anger, the frivolous smile on Yayu's face disappeared in an instant, and he returned to his indifferent posture. By the way, what I just said was purely a compliment and had no other meaning. Although Yayu said it so seriously, Reveria always felt that she was being teased. Although she was teased, she was completely unable to get angry or angry. In other words, looking at the young man standing in front of her, she doesn't know why she can't get angry at all, right? The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai. Chapter 17. Forget it, just think of it as a small punishment for using him to restore your magic power. Who would let me have such close contact with him with bad intentions? Reveria sighed slightly, and the anger in her heart completely disappeared. Looking at the boy beside her, she bowed slightly again. In any case, please accept my apology, whether it's the Minotaur who was let go or Bert's rudeness. Well, don't take it to heart, I accept your apology. Instead of rejecting the girl's kindness, Yayu nodded gently to express that he forgave them. Would you do the same to me? And at this moment, Wallenstein, who had been standing aside without saying anything, suddenly muttered something like this in a very strange tone. Well, what do you mean? Yayu was stunned for a moment and looked at Wallenstein strangely. You want Reveria to be yours, so what about me? Did you also have such thoughts when you saw me? Wallenstein's beautiful golden eyes widened and he stared at Yayu expectantly. How should I put it? Seeing the girl's serious eyes, Yayu felt embarrassed for a moment and didn't know what to say. Reveria on the other side also had a look of dumbfounding. Although I know that Wallenstein is a little weak, it is really embarrassing. As a girl, you should be more reserved. Looking at Wallenstein who was staring at him seriously expecting to get the answer, Yayu didn't know how to answer. If you honestly answer that you have such thoughts, you will definitely be regarded as a pervert, right? But if the answer is no, will she think that I think she is not as beautiful as Reveria? Although I do like a woman like Reveria who is full of maternal aura. Yayu became entangled, and Wallenstein continued to stare at Yayu. At this critical moment, Reveria came forward to break the silence and embarrassment. Okay, let's go first, everyone in the family is still waiting for us. Reveria said this, pulling Wallenstein along and planning to leave. But just before leaving, she turned around as if she had thought of something. By the way, please leave this crystal to me. If you want to make some compensation, our Loki family will naturally compensate you, but if you take this crystal out, it will cause unnecessary trouble. Reveria said this. After all, it is a bit unbelievable that a LV1 adventurer has the magic crystal of the LV2 Minotaur in his hands. Wait a minute, a LV1 adventurer. Thinking of the crux of the problem, Reveria widened her eyes with a dull expression. How did you get to the 9th floor? Since it is LV1, how can it be possible to get down to the 9th floor? This is completely abnormal. Yayu was stunned again. How should he say it? He didn't encounter a single monster along the way, and then he came to the 9th floor smoothly? Who would believe this kind of thing? Wallenstein stared at Yayu strangely. Although he didn't know why he claimed to be LV1, this was absolutely impossible. With the power of the frost she just felt, Wallenstein can be sure that the other party is at least the same LV5 adventurer as herself, and may even be stronger. He wanted to ask, but looking at the look in Yayu's eyes, Wallenstein chose silence again. Does it seem like the other party doesn't want to expose such information? Well, I was actually helping an adventure group carry things, but when we got to the 9th floor, we suddenly met the Minotaur, and everyone ran away. After a moment, Yayu thought of a perfect reason. Is this, like this? Reveria was slightly stunned, but she didn't think much about it. Maybe she felt that Yayu didn't need to lie to her, and as a LV1 person, there was no way he could go down to the 9th floor. As for Yayu's hidden strength, it seems impossible to Reveria. As a great mage, she can clearly see that Yayu's physical strength has reached its limit. This level of physical fitness it can only be a novice adventurer. Then let's send you up. As for the magic crystal, we will help you exchange it for gold coins and then give it to you. Reveria smiled so tenderly, and Yayuz nodded gratefully. He didn't want to go to the Adventurers Guild with this crystal in such an ostentatious manner. It was never a pleasant thing to be stared at by someone who wanted to do it. Well, the crystals of LV2 monsters should be able to be exchanged for a lot of money, right? Accompanied by two beautiful women, Reveria and Wallenstein, Yayu came to the Adventurers Guild. Ina, who was originally worried because Yayu hadn't come back for so long, showed a strange expression when she saw him returning with two powerful adventurers from the Loki familia. Ina naturally knows the names of these two female adventurers. One is Ace Wallenstein, who is called the most powerful female swordsman, and the other is Levi, who is called the most powerful mage. Leah. Both are the aces of the Loki familia, powerful adventurers at LV5. The question is, how did the two of them get together with Yayu? It seems that the relationship is quite close. Are you Mr. Yayu's adventure consultant? While Ina was in a daze, Reveria stepped forward and asked. Ah, that's right. How come the two Loki clan members are with Yayu? Ah, we rescued him on the 9th floor because of an accident, and then brought him back with us. Reveria said this, but did not directly say anything about letting the Minotaur go. After all, it was a slightly embarrassing thing. 9th floor. As for Ina, Reveria was so disgusted by what she said that she almost fell off her chair. Staring at Yayu with murderous eyes, Ina spoke fiercely. Thank you so much for the help of the two Loki clan members, otherwise this guy who doesn't know the heights of the sky will definitely die in the dungeon. Ah, it was actually our mistake that put Mr. Yayu in a dangerous spot. Seeing Ina looking like she wanted to settle a score with Yayu, Reveria said this with some embarrassment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 18. No, Miss Reveria, you don't need to put in a good word for him. This is not the first time this bastard has been so troublesome after being an adventurer for only 2 days. Ina said helplessly. On the first day, she ran to the 5th floor, and on the second day, she ran to the 9th floor. On the third day, do you plan to go directly to the middle floor? You are too troublesome. Bar. Putting a hand on her forehead, Ina thought so troubledly. Her attitude also made Reveria not sure what to say, so she could only look at Yayu a little apologetically. Yayu shook his head indifferently. At most, he was scolded by Ina a little. Moreover, it was his fault to go down to the 9th floor privately. He clearly promised her at that time not to take risks again. But what surprised Reveria a little was that Yayu had only been an adventurer for 2 days. If he had only been an adventurer for 2 days, he actually dared to go down to the 9th floor. Even with other adventurers, Reveria, I have to admire Yayu's boldness. Wallenstein's eyes widened in disbelief. If he had only been an adventurer for 2 days, how could he have cast such a powerful magic? Wallenstein was a little confused, but his curiosity about Yayu became more intense. Okay, I'm going to change the spar first, please wait a moment. As Reveria said this, she and Wallenstein walked to the money exchange in the guild, leaving their space to Aina and Yayu. After Reveria and Wallenstein left, the smile on Ina's face suddenly disappeared, and she stared at Yayu with a dark face. What happened today? Don't tell me that you went down to the 9th floor because you never encountered a monster. As Ina said this, she weakly held her forehead. In fact, the girl couldn't figure out how Yayu could get down to the 9th floor except for this reason. The strength of the monsters on the 9th level is absolutely invincible to newcomers who have just become adventurers, unless Yayu's data can reach B level or A level. But how could it be possible to have such attributes just after signing a contract? The improvement of basic abilities is related to the racial characteristics and the frequency of use of corresponding abilities. It is impossible to have such powerful strength without hard work. Then there is only one possibility, that is, as Yayu said, he still went down to the 9th floor without encountering any monsters. What is the reason for this abnormal situation where Yayu obviously relied on his own strength to reach the 9th floor? Ina frowned and thought hard, but she couldn't figure out the reason. At this time, Reveria and Wallenstein came back again. Here are the 2,000 Wallace exchanged. Even if our Loki family compensates you, please keep it. Putting the heavy bag of money into Yayu's palm, Reveria whispered into his ear. Feeling the fragrance of the elf girl who was approaching and the warm breath coming from her lips, Yayu couldn't help but feel confused and fascinated. Reveria's inadvertent display of tenderness always made him unable to help but immerse himself in it. Then, we're destined to meet again. Let's go, Ace. Before he could recover, the two girls said goodbye to him and left the Adventurers Guild. How on earth did you meet the two members of the Loki Familia? Feeling that Yayu and Reveria had a too close relationship, Ina muttered with a strange expression. I can't say anything about this issue because it involves the privacy of Loki's family. In response to Ina's question, Yayu shook his head and did not give an answer. After all, the less people know about the Minotaur accident, the better. Well, forget it, I'm not the kind of woman who likes to gossip, and if I gossip about the strong men of Loki's clan, I'm just asking for trouble. Reveria and Wallenstein, who are both beautiful and powerful, have countless suitors and admirers. If they casually say bad things about them, they will definitely be severely punished by the group of flower guardians. Don't leave in a hurry. We have to have a good talk about your affairs. As your adventure consultant, I must be responsible for you. If you hadn't been lucky enough to meet someone from the Loki Familia today, you would have been killed. Dead. Once counts you lucky, twice counts you lucky. How long do you think you can be lucky and how long do you think it lasts? Well, let's wait until tomorrow to preach or anything like that. It's too late today. Hestia will be anxious at home. I have to go back first. Yeah, you said this, immediately ignored Aina, turned and left the Adventurers Guild. Hey, you bastard. Come back here. Seeing Yayu running away all the way, Aina looked helpless and helpless. After all, she is just a consultant. Yayu refers to her suggestions. As for whether the other party implements them, it is the other party's freedom. You forced me to do this. Don't think that I don't dare to tell Hestia. Ina can be sure that Hestia has absolutely no idea that Yayu went to such a deep level privately. If she knew, I'm afraid she would come to see her as an adventure consultant as soon as possible, right? So it's really difficult to be a consultant, especially when faced with a problem taker like this. Thinking of this, Ina sighed helplessly and immediately returned to her work. Although 3,000 Wallace is not a particularly large amount, it is definitely a huge sum of money for Yayu and Hestia. After all, Hestia could only earn a few dozen Wallace from selling fried potatoes all day long. As for an adventurer who has just debuted, earning 100 or 200 Wallace a day is already quite impressive. It can be said that these 3,000 Valis are equivalent to the results of Hestia's hard work for a month. You're back, why are you so late today? Didn't I tell you, do what you can and don't take risks? Hestia had already been waiting for Yayu at home. When Yayu entered the door, the girl said this with some displeasure. Well, there was a little accident, but luckily it was saved. Hey, are you in danger? So I told you to be careful. Yayu, what if something happens to you and leaves me alone? After saying that, Hestia gently touched Yayu's hand with her two small hands. It seemed to be to confirm whether he was injured or not. From the girl's words, Yayu could hear the deep worry and care, which made him couldn't help but smile tenderly. He reached out and gently stroked the head of the approaching girl god. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 19. Yayu really likes to act coquettishly. Once again having her head touched like this by Yayu, Hestia curled her lips slightly and then said this with a slight smile. Was he actually being coquettish to Hestia? Hestia said this jokingly, but Yayu's thought about it carefully. It seems like this is indeed the case. Being insecure in this world, I couldn't help but want to find a warm embrace. This was the case for Hestia, and it was the same for Reveria. I'm not lying anymore, I really want you, Reveria. Thinking of the elf girl with a motherly smile again, Yayu's heart throbbed uncontrollably, and a certain desire in his heart became stronger and stronger. This is my harvest today. Not feeling that there was anything wrong with his coquettish behavior, Yayu instead brought his body closer to Hestia. Such behavior earned the girl a burst of irritation, but the latter did not resist. Oh, did you make a lot today? Hestia said happily and took the money bag Yayu gave her. However, after feeling the weight of the purse, Hestia's expression became a little ugly. Naturally, it's not because Yayu earns too little money, on the contrary, it's because Yayu earns too much money. This amount of Wallace is unscientific. Today is only Yayu's second day as an adventurer. If he were to hunt goblins and tree spirits on the first level, he would have to kill at least 100 monsters to obtain this amount of Wallace. Bar. Yayu, tell me honestly. How did you earn all this money? Didn't I tell you not to put yourself in a dangerous situation? Hestia was really a little angry. The girl stared at her round blue pupils. Although she was questioning angrily, there was something crystal clear in her eyes. If you die suddenly, I will blame myself for the rest of my life. Sorry. Seeing such a lovable girl, Yayu couldn't help but hold Hestia tightly in his arms, leaned into her ear and apologized over and over again. And Hestia finally couldn't help the emotions in her heart, and cried in Yayu's arms. I told you, asking you to make money to support me is just a joke. Yayu just needs to survive well. I don't want to be alone again. Don't worry, it won't be like this. Hestia will never be alone, because I will always be by your side. Yayu said so gently, and then began to explain the origin of these Wallace. It's my fault. I didn't make it clear. In fact, I didn't earn this money on my own. Didn't I have a slight accident? This money is the compensation I received because of that accident. After listening to Yayu's explanation, Hestia calmed down a little, but the look in her eyes when she looked at Yayu became strange. Does Ace Wallenstein still have Reveria Luce Alvi? You are really lucky to be able to come into contact with two rare beauties in Labyrinth City Orario. A cold swordsman, an iceberg-shaped beauty, an elf beauty as gentle as a mother. She is really enviable. Are you okay, Hestia? Looking at the little goddess who was mumbling through gritted teeth, the expression on Yayu's face became extremely weird. What kind of situation is this? Hestia seems to be jealous. How could it be possible? I obviously didn't say anything ambiguous. For example, Wallenstein held onto her hand and Reveria hugged her and couldn't bear to let go. I didn't mention it at all. Hestia shouldn't be angry about this, right? It's okay. Okay, let's take off your clothes first. After so many encounters today, maybe Yayu's attributes have improved dramatically. Showing a somewhat stiff smile at Yayu, Hestia immediately rushed towards Yayu without saying a word. Don't be so impatient, I can do it myself. Some people couldn't laugh or cry as they said this, but after saying that, Yayu felt something was wrong. Why did the words I just said sound so what? Soon after, Yayu took off his shirt and lay flat on the bed, and Hestia also rode on Yayu's back and began to observe Yayu's data just like yesterday. But after looking at it, Hestia frowned slightly. Yayu's basic attributes have not changed at all, which means that his strength has not improved at all. What's wrong, Hestia? Sensing Hestia's confused silence, Yayu, who felt a little strange, turned around and asked. No, it's nothing, because Yayu's strength has improved a lot, which makes me a little shocked. Hestia said nervously, and immediately smiled at Yayu. Is it like this? Yayu didn't have any ideas. He didn't know why he looked at these things very indifferently. He turned over and got off Yayu's body and sat next to him. Hestia held her chin and muttered to herself. Wallenstein and Reveria of the Loki familia. Such beautiful and incredibly strong girls must be liked and pursued by many boys. If they were them, there would definitely be many flower protectors around them. Explain. Is it like this? Yeah, you couldn't help but think of Bert, who was very emotional at that time. It's okay. So, don't be infatuated with these two. Pay more attention to the people around you. There must be someone who can tolerate you gently and is very beautiful. After all, as members of Loki's family, it is impossible for the two of them to marry you, Yayu. They are destined to be from the same world as you, Yayu. People who join a family can freely marry members of the opposite sex within the family. But if you marry someone from another family, you will have children. Which family does that child belong to? Although this is only a special case and not the whole story, if you maintain too close relationships with other factions, it can easily lead to disadvantages. In order to operate regularly, the gods themselves are unusually strict in managing the family. Also, if the relationship between the gods and men is bad, or if they are in a hostile relationship with the other party's family, that way they won't let their members bring danger to the family. Both Ina and Hestia mentioned these most basic things to Yayu, but Yayu didn't seem to care much about them. Isn't she from the same world, then? Wouldn't it be enough to snatch her away and bring her to my world? The Ultimate Lich King. Author, Xiezhongdai Shang. Chapter 20. Adventurer Sama, have you had breakfast today? In the morning, I passed by the roadside tavern as usual. The waitress in the tavern, Xia, seemed to be standing at the door waiting for Yayu. Carrying a small basket, he looked at Yayu with a smile. Thank you for your concern. I've already eaten. Declining the girl's kindness, Yayu couldn't help but smile slightly. Are you free tonight? How about I treat you to a meal? Hey, how can this work? I still have to work in the store. 11er blushed and spoke hesitantly, while Yayu shook his head indifferently. If you want to work, you can do it anytime. At worst, I can just pay you like the boss lady. Hestia only took 1,000 of the 3,000 Wallace in exchange for the Minotaur's magic crystal, and placed the remaining 2,000 with Yayu. Yayu also changed when he had money on hand. He became more generous and planned to repay this girl who silently helped and cared for him. Why? The slightly stunned girl didn't know how to refuse Yayu's invitation for a moment, but Yayu turned around and left with a smile. Then it's settled, wait for me tonight. Saying this with frivolous words full of hints, Yayu immediately ignored the blushing girl who was being teased and her heartbeat was beating. Yayu turned around and left in a chic way. What? Why haven't we seen him for so long? I feel like Mr. Yayu is a different person. Recalling the Yayu who was slightly vigilant and a little indifferent to everything when they met for the first time, and then comparing it with Yayu today, 11ER couldn't help but have an unreal feeling. But, it's not bad to look like this. He looks very handsome when he smiles, Mr. Yayu. With this thought in her mind, the shy girl turned around and returned to the shop. In the evening, Aina saw a dejected Yayu in the Adventurers Guild. What's wrong? We didn't meet any monsters today. Raising her eyebrows slightly, Aina looked at Yayu and asked. Ah, as usual, no monsters were encountered. Yayu said this feebly. Yesterday he met a Minotaur. Yayu thought he could finally encounter the monster, but the result was disappointing. Come with me first. There were not many people in the hall, but obviously this was not the place to talk. If Yayu's situation is like this, it's best not to let others know about it, otherwise there's no telling what strange rumors will spread. Walking into the small room dedicated to one-to-one tutoring, Aina took the lead and sat down against the table, then looked at Yayu with a serious face and asked. How many floors did you go down to today? 5th floor. Yayu explained honestly, and Aina breathed a sigh of relief. The 5th floor is the 5th floor, at least it's better than going straight to the 9th floor yesterday. Good on you, sister. As an adventurer who has only been on an adventure for 3 days, don't think that going to the 5th floor is as easy as going shopping in your back garden. Today we have to solve this problem a little bit. If you keep messing around like this, I can only react like Lord Hestia. Otherwise, if you die in the depths one day, I, the adventure consultant, will definitely suffer because of it. Those who failed to meet the standards were held accountable. Ina said this with a troubled look, but just as she thought, when Hestia's name was mentioned, Yayu suddenly became honest. This kind of thing shouldn't happen. I can't meet monsters at all. Then how do you explain what happened yesterday? Didn't you encounter a monster on the 9th floor? So I have said that you may not encounter monsters because of your luck, but you will always encounter monsters. What should you do at that time? Close your eyes and wait for death. Aina said so earnestly, and Yayu could only lower his head helplessly. I remember I told you a long time ago, right? Even if you don't encounter monsters, you will be brought to the 1st floor honestly. What did you take my words for? It's deafening. What did you say? No, I mean I have always remembered your reminder, Ina. He said it accidentally, and Yayu quickly changed his words. Seeing Yayu's careless look, Aina was really helpless. The other adventurers all cherished their own lives. I don't know what happened to Yayu, but he seemed to not care about his life or death at all. Doesn't he have a little sense of danger? Doesn't he know what serious consequences his actions will have if something unexpected happens? I know, I'm just an adventure consultant. Maybe you didn't listen to what I said, but I want to say, for the sake of Lady Hestia, please cherish your life and stop doing some very dangerous actions. Adventure in the dungeon is not accomplished overnight, please proceed step by step. Don't worry, I won't tell Lady Hestia about your private trip to the lower level, but I ask you to take care of yourself in the future. New. Yayu nodded honestly, thinking in his heart that next time he would go to the lower level without telling you. But as if she guessed what kind of attention Yayu was paying, Ina stared at Yayu with unkind eyes. And don't think about hiding anything from me. I want you to know what the consequences will be if I find out. I know, can I go? As Yayu answered, he nodded like a chicken pecking at rice, making Aina wave her hand in a funny way. Let's go, as if I'm some kind of savage beast. Seeing Yayu's appearance, Aina curled her lips in displeasure, but said nothing more. It's not that Misogina has always been thinking about me. Instead, it's because I'm not sensible and I've been worrying Misogina. Thank you again Misogina for your concern. When he walked to the door, Yayu turned around again and said seriously, and then left the room. What, don't think that I will be happy if you say such things to please me. Although she said this, Ina felt warm in her heart after listening to Yayu's words. The girl couldn't help but touch her face. She didn't seem to be unattractive. At first, she was still I thought I was not attractive to the boy at all.